إذا كنت تريد أن تكون على مذهب السلف تعلم مذهب السلف.
And one thing, guys, and it's very, very important to mention, and I think you mentioned this earlier today, how to sometimes approach studying. All right? If, for example, today's Friday, we've got 7 days until we're going to meet again. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. If somebody leaves the memorization of this hadith until, I don't know, say Thursday, the day before they're supposed to read it, they're going to find that, number one, they won't be able to do it. Number two, they're not going to find no joy in doing it. And number three, we have to remember that what we're going to be doing is an act of worship. The reason why we're memorizing the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you don't want to find yourself in a situation due to bad organization that worship doesn't feel good. Alright? And it's burdensome. That's a lose-lose situation. Right? We want to be in a win-win situation where not only are we worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we're enjoying it. And it's fun. And then we've got healthy competition among ourselves. Is that okay, ikhwan? So my advice to you, for example, the first hadith, literally, if we're looking at just the hadith, it is maybe 3 lines. No, but we're going to get to it in a minute. Don't worry about finding the hadith yet. But it's very, very short. That's my point. So let's say, for example, today, when you go home, you memorize maybe 3 or 4 words from the first line. Okay, this is the masjid phone. I'm going to hang up. You memorize 3 or 4 words from the first line. Day 2, which is going to be Saturday, tomorrow, you memorize another 3 or 4 words from that first sentence. The next day, you just keep practicing it. Then day 3, you take a little bit. The idea is not to overload yourself with too much information. Do little bits consistently. All right? It will help you tremendously. Then by next week, inshallah ta'ala, you should be fluent. The second piece of advice, like you two, mashallah, tabarakallah, have initiated, is it'll be good to pick a partner that you are in contact with periodically during the week, so you guys can hold each other to account. So for example, it's good, you hold each other to account and hold each other responsible. So for example, Abdul Rahim, you call up Muhammad, Akhi, have you memorized your 3 lines or your 3 words? Alright? And that, assalamu alaikum, that's going to cause you to, not saying that you're not going to want to let your partner down, but when you start something together, you're going to want to subsequently complete it together. So these are just little tips and tricks, if you like, how to move forward in the best way possible, inshallah ta'ala, as it relates to Al-Arba'in al-Nawawi. Before we get into the hadith, it's a custom of, it's what our teachers used to do. We have a little brief introduction about the author of the book, alright? And then we're going to jump in, inshallah ta'ala. Feel free, as and when I want it to be informal like our previous lesson, any questions that you have or anything that you don't understand from what I'm presenting, stop me. Alright, you don't have to put your hand up. You can just...
The book that I'm using is from Fawzan Revisited.
Okay.
The one I have is portraying is any different.
That's fine. The book that I'm at... Okay, the question from Sheikh Muhammad was, the book that you guys have in your laps right now is the 40 Hadith of Imam al-Nawawi as explained by Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him. He's one of the biggest scholars alive today in Saudi Arabia. The book that Sheikh Muhammad has is the same book, but the explanation by another Sheikh, Muhammad al-Thaymin. May Allah have mercy upon him. He passed away some 12, 13 years ago, 14 years ago. And that's actually the book that I have here. Alright, that's the book that I have here. It doesn't matter which explanation that you go by. All of the ulama, they're going to mention, roughly the same things. It's just that one may mention a few things that the other one doesn't, and vice versa. And it's always good to go through different shuruhat. Shuruhat is the plural of sharh. Different explanations of different scholars. Bi'idhni Rabbina Azza wa Jal. Did you have a question? No, Okay. G. Before we start, is there any questions? Any questions? Go.
In regards to memorization, for example, he went to the shop. That's what I had to memorize. What's the best way to? Is it just constantly just keep on reading it?
Excellent question. As it relates to memorization, this class is going to be big on memorization. What's the best time to memorize? All right. What's the best method to memorize? Like the brother said, do you just repeat? ذهب إلى السوق, ذهب إلى السوق, ذهب إلى السوق. That's a method of memorization. Just extreme tikrar, repetition, repetition, repetition. But I'd go one step further, and I would say that when it comes to memorizing, whether it be Quran or Ahadith, it's, I don't want to say incumbent, but it's highly, highly, highly recommended to be cognizant about, number one, the time in which you choose to memorize. Don't pick up a book like Arba'een to memorize just before you go to sleep. Why? You're tired, you're switching off. You're going to be reading إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. You read it 10 times, you close the book, you say, what's the first word again? That's how it will be. Because the brain's not fully focused. You want to go to bed at the end of the day. One of the best times to memorize anything is when? بعد الفجر. بعد الفجر.
When you pray Qiyam al-Layl or something.
Again, as long as you've had some time to rest, whether you get up for Qiyam al-Layl or you get up for Fajr, your body would have had time to rest, and inshallah ta'ala you'll be fresh. Alright? Another thing is, try not to memorize when you're hungry. Try not to memorize when you're hungry. You need to make sure that all of these different elements and factors are in place so that you can focus solely on what it is that you want to do. Alright? Another point I would say, and this is khas for the mutazawijeen, the married brothers. Don't memorize or don't try to memorize when you've got your kids running up and down. Or when your wife's telling you to do this and do that, and can you do this? Or this one's in the toilet, can you go and clean them? This one needs to go to bed, can you put them to sleep? Every time you start, you're going to get fed up and you're going to be like, I'm not going to do it no more. So you have to approach the whole approach to memorizing in a deeper method than just say, okay, I'm just going to memorize now. No, pick your time wisely. Some people might memorize better in a certain place. If you find that you can't memorize at home, come to the masjid. It's quiet. Some people like to memorize, especially with Quran, by facing the wall. They will literally face the wall, so they've got no distractions. If you're like me, if you're reading something, anytime anybody moves, you look. If you're like that and you're easily distracted, then turn your back to people where you've got nothing to distract you except the wall and the paint on the wall. Alright? And yeah, again, pick a study buddy. I can't emphasize that enough. Somebody that will sit down with you, and it don't have to be half an hour. It doesn't have to be an hour. It could literally be 5 minutes daily, 10 minutes every other day. The idea is that you do small bits consistently, as opposed to doing, 2 hours in one day. And then for the rest of the 6 days, you don't do anything. Another thing, guys, as well, in preparing for this lesson, I can't tell you how many times I've read what I'm going to share with you today. I read it to myself multiple times. I called up my sheikh. I read it to him. And the whole idea is, again, this repetition. With repetition, the information stays. What's one of the reasons that hardly any Muslim will forget Surah Al-Fatiha? 17 times a day. You won't really find a Muslim that will get stuck on Surah Al-Fatiha. It's difficult because we just do it every single day, 17 times a day to be precise. All right, and this is what it's got to be with your seeking of knowledge. I don't wanna scare you guys, but when it comes to approaching knowledge, you have to approach it like you approach food and drink. And I can't remember who I said this to recently. Maybe Adil. You have to approach it like food and drink. Who's able to survive without food and drink? Wala ahad.